Shalom. My name is Jeffrey Wolf. I teach in the Talmud department at Bar-Ilan University. It is my pleasure to participate in this Sinai at Home program of the Orthodox Union. And by the miracle or the wonders of Zoom, to be able to share a shir, excuse me, that crosses the oceans and the continents. The topic is the blessing of the ger. The reason is very simple. Many of you are aware of the fact that Shavuot has many, many different names. It is known as Yom Chag HaBikurim. It is the festival of the first fruits, or it is also the festival in which we bring Shtei HaLechem. We bring the two, the double loaf in the temple. It is Man Matan Toratenu, the anniversary of the giving of Torah, which is the name by which it's best known. But it is also goes by a name which is usually not uttered. It is also, it's usually not mentioned. This one aspect. This doesn't even, the truth is, it doesn't even have a name like that. But it really should be called also Zman Giurenu, the time for converts, the time for conversion. Now, the truth of the matter is that that might sound a little bit odd, because, I mean, yes, we know that on Shavuot we read the Megillah of Ruth. We read the story of Ruth, the Moabitess, who left her family and stayed with Naomi, and she converted to Judaism and said the immortal words, Amecha mi velokayach Elokai, your people shall be my people and your God my God. And as a result of this act of bravery and the acts of chesed, of loving kindness that she showed towards her widowed mother-in-law, she was rewarded by being the ancestress both of David HaMelech, whose yortzeit is on Shavuot, and whose birthday was actually on Shavuot, as well as the direct ancestress of Mashiach Tzidkenu. In fact, most people, if you ask them, why do you read the story of Ruth on Shavuot, the answer you'll get is because of David HaMelech, or because the action, the drama, the story of Ruth took place around this time of year. There's all kinds of different explanations. But the truth of the matter is an even easier explanation. You know, there's no stretch involved. And the best explanation is the fact that on Shavuot we celebrate conversion, because at the end of the day we're all converts, and Ruth symbolizes exactly the kind of convert that we are supposed to be, and what we expect from other gerim. She is the Gioret Tzedek par excellence. Wait, did I just say that we're all converts? We're not all converts. On the contrary, most of us, or many of us, can trace our yichus all the way back to who knows. So why am I calling everybody here, including myself, a convert? The answer is very simple, and let's look to the source sheet. Maimonides says so. None other than the Rambam. The Rambam, in the beginning of his discussion of conversion, laws of conversion in Ilchot Yisurei Bia, says as follows: Bishlosha dvarim nichnesu Yisrael labrit, that the children of Israel entered into the covenant with God after they had done three things. 1, milah, circumcision. 2, tefillah, immersion in a mikveh. And 3, had brought the appropriate korban, the appropriate sacrifice. And then the Rambam says historically that that these three things happened at different stages, leading up to Matan Torah. Milah hayta b'Mitzrayim. All of the males of Israel were in fact circumcised way before Matan Torah in Egypt, in the run-up to the Exodus, and as a preparation for the offering of the Paschal sacrifice, the Korban Pesach. Shenemar v'chol harei lo yochel bo. The Torah, God had already told Moshe Rabbeinu that nobody could eat of the Korban Pesach unless they're in Arel. So as a result, if they were uncircumcised, as a result, Malotam Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a point of making sure that all of the Israelite males were circumcised. Shekulam bitlu brit milah b'Mitzrayim, because all of the other tribes had in fact abandoned Brit Milah while they were in Egypt, except for the tribe of Levi. Chutz mishevet Levi, valzen ne'amar ubrit chadi and sorrow. In the blessing of Levi, it says that the Levites had actually guarded and watched over and preserved the Brit. However, more than that among the Israelites, you don't find. So that's number one. So they were all already circumcised. Utvila. When do you find that there was that the all Jews, men and women, immersed in a mikvah preparatory to Mount Sinai, to the theophany at Sinai? Mila Haitaba Midbar. The Jews in the few days before Matan Torah, during what's known as the Shloshet Yemei Hagbala, the 3 days of setting a cross or setting apart, Kodem Matan Torah. Shneamar v'kidashtam hayom u'machar v'chapsu simlotam. God tells Moshe Rabbeinu to sanctify the Bnei Israel, to sanctify the Israelites today and tomorrow, leading up to the first to Matan Torah. V'chapsu simlotam, and they should wash their garments. And the Gemara in Yevamos says that refers to tefillah. The korban, and there was also a sacrifice involved. Shneamar vayishlach. This is a pasuk at the end of Parshat Mishpatim, which is actually the end of the story of Matan Torah. The way that the Torah is organized, according to many Reforshim, is you have the story of Matan Torah, and then you have Parshat Mishpatim, and then at the end, the Torah tells us exactly about that. Tells us that at the end of Matan Torah, at the end of the theophany of the revelation, so there was so Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain with the elders, and they offered sacrifices. Then Moshe Rabbeinu went up for 40 days to the mountain. There were Meforshim would understand it differently, but that's clearly the way the Rambam understood it. That all of Israel who have now become Jewish by virtue of the fact that they accepted the Torah, they offer sacrifices. So those are the 3 stages. In other words, the Rambam it tells us basically here that the process of Matan Torah was a process of conversion, because before the Jews went to Har Sinai, they weren't Jewish. They didn't have Kedushat Yisrael. They were not Noachites. They had more, that we had more mitzvot than Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, but we hadn't quite gotten there to a full Kedushat Yisrael. We hadn't fully entered into the status of being Jewish. As Rabbi Rav Soloveitchik often used to point out, that the Kedusha, that sanctity, is exactly relevant to the amount of obligation. The more obligation you have, the greater the Kedusha you have. So therefore, the average person, non-Jewish person in the world, has a certain level of Kedusha because he has 7 mitzvot. The Avot had more mitzvot, so they had more Kedusha than everybody else, but they had not come quite to the point of being Jewish because they weren't obligated by the Taryag mitzvot, by the 613 mitzvot. Okay. In any event, the Rambam then goes on, and this is the important part for our purposes. V'chein lidorot, and so it is for the future generations. V'chein in the Rambam means that there's an equation. That's a technical word. V'chein, in other words, what I said before is equally and absolutely applicable for what comes afterwards. V'chein lidorot, k'shiyirtzeh ha'akom, when a non-Jew wants to likanes librit, he wants to come into the covenant, v'listafef tachat kanfei hashchina, and he wants to dwell, or he wants to huddle under the wings of the divine presence. V'yikabel alav ol Torah, and he accepts upon himself the burden or the yoke of the Torah. Tzarich mila utvila v'atzat korban. He needs to, like as with the Jews at Sinai, or leading up to Sinai, if it's a man, he needs to be converted. Man or woman have to be immersed in a mikvah, v'atzat korban, and they also have to bring certain sacrifices. The Torah itself says explicitly that what we underwent at Sinai is what a ger undergoes, and this goes both ways. What we went through is applicable to gerim, and their status is applicable to us. So we are no less, in a certain sense, gerim than they were. Ma'atem b'milah utfilah v'atzat korban, just as you entered into the covenant through circumcision and immersion in a mikveh and a sacrifice, so a ger, similarly a convert, lidorot, as in future generations, b'milah utfilah v'hartzat korban. Okay. So I would suggest that it's very simple why we read Megillat Ruth, because Ruth is the exemplar of everything that we're supposed to be as everything a convert is supposed to be, and if they do as we're supposed to do, and we do as they, so obviously we're supposed to learn from Ruth. Um, we're supposed to learn from Ruth how we should comport ourselves as well, not just how we should deal with how we should just address converts. So that's point number one. Please excuse me. But on the at the same time, and Maimonides is very explicit about this, and very emphatic, I should say, about this equation between the convert and the person who was born as a Jew, to the point where the equation is absolutely unassailable. I'll give you an example, and the best where the Rambam makes this very clear is in a responsum that he wrote to a man whose name was Ovadia Ger Tzedek, Ovadia the proselyte, the righteous proselyte. Apparently, his Muslim. He was a Muslim originally. There were two. Actually, I should be clear. There were two famous medieval converts named Ovadia, at least. One of them was formerly a Muslim. One of them was formerly a Christian. We're going to get to the second one a little bit later. But the one who was formerly a Muslim converted. Apparently, he was from Eretz Israel himself, and he converted, and he lived, and we know that he studied Torah, and he corresponded with the Rambam. And at one stage, he asked the Rambam, when he davens, how should he daven? How should he daven? Should he say Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu? He wasn't born Jewish. Can he say our God and the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob? Or does he have to say the God of the Israelites who I joined? In other words, is there a fundamental difference between me and they? Do I have to? Does it always have to be in my face that I was a convert? On the other hand, he wasn't born Jewish, so perhaps to avoid, he doesn't want to lie before God, God forbid. So what should he do? Maimonides, following the same line that he set in the Mishnah Torah, was emphatic. Says Maimonides, "V'ikar hadavar." The most important thing you should know, the central point is, Sha'avraham Avinu hu shelimed kol ha'am. He was the one who went and taught the entire people, and he instructed them, he enlightened them. V'hodiem dat ha'emet, and he taught them the true religion, meaning the belief in one God. V'yichudo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the oneness of God. Uba'at ba'avodah zarah, and he kicked away idolatry. V'herfer avodata, and he disrupted, or he abolished, or he dismissed worship of idols. And he caused many people to enter into the under the wings of the Shekhinah. And he taught them too. And he instructed them. And he taught his children and those of his house. And in other words, the Gerim also became part of his household. V'shmor derech Hashem, to guard or to mark the way of God. Kemoshe katuv b'Torah, as the Torah itself says, Ki yedativ l'mana sheyitzaved banav et beito acharav v'shamru derech Hashem. I know that that Abraham, he said, God says this before one of the covenants. I know him that he will instruct his children and the members of his household, meaning the Gerim that he made, to guard them, to guard or observe the path of God. Lefichach, says the Rambam, Kol mi sheyitgayer at sof kol hadorot. Anybody who converts to the end of all the generations. V'kol hamiyuchad shemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anybody who affirms the oneness of the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. Kemoshu katuv b'Torah. Such a person is Talmido shel Avram Avinu, and he is part of Bnei Beitos, part of his household kulam. V'hu echzir otam lemutav. Kishem she'echzir et anshei doro b'fivu limudo, kach echzir kol atidim lehitgayer b'tza'avato. Basically, the same way that Avram Avinu brought people away, weaned them away, brought them away, convinced them to leave idolatry. Similarly, anybody who follows in his path automatically becomes part of Abraham's household, and as a result, he is part of that broad movement towards the worship of the one God. Lefichach, therefore the Rambam says, Yesh lecha lomar, you Ovadia should say, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu, Elokei Avraham, you are the Elokei Avotenu, the forgotten God of our fathers. Why Avraham alav shalom hu avicha? He is your father. And also, when you talk about the fact that God promised the land to our forefathers, you have as much of a part of that patrimony as anybody else. You're a descendant of Avraham Avinu, a spiritual descendant. Therefore, just as the promise of the land of Israel was given to Avraham Avinu, so it was given to you. Then I have given you the land. Then the Rambam backs off a little bit, and he says, Aval, look it depends on how you feel. If you feel uncomfortable saying that my ancestors, meaning Uvadja's ancestors, went out of Egypt, if you want to change the wording of the prayers, then that's okay. Aval Tano mi Mitzrayim, who brought us out of Egypt. Oshasita nisim levotenu, you did miracles for our ancestors. Imratzita lishanot, if you wanted to modify the prayers of Lomar Shot, say that Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, that you took Israel out of Egypt. Vashasita nisima im Yisrael, so you can change it if you want. However, that's up to you. Im lo shinita. If you pray along with everyone else and you make yourself part of the congregation of Israel and pray precisely the way everybody else does, Ein bekach hefsed, you lost nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. Ein lecha hefsed klum. The Rambam sort of doubles up on his language here. Ein becha hefsed klum. There's absolutely no loss. There's nothing wrong with that. Me'achar shenichnasta tachat kanfei hashchina, since you have come under the wings of God's presence, vinil vita edlav, and you joined us, ein kan hefresh beinenu uveinecha. There is no difference between you and between us. B'chol anisim nasu keilu lanu v'lecha nasu. When all of the miracles that were done for Bnei Israel over the generations, as if they were done for you, just as much as they were done for us. Harehu omer b'Yeshayahu, because the prophet Isaiah says, "Val yomar ben anechara lilval Hashem le'mor." This is the end of Dirshu Hashem, the part of Yeshayahu that we say on Haftorah and fast days afternoon of a fast day. The person who was born not Jewish and who joined God should never say that God has separated us from my people. He says the pasuk tells us explicitly, "Ein shum efresh klal beinenu uveincha lechol davar." There's no difference whatsoever. Now, this position of the Rambam is very emphatic and something of a tour de force, because if you take a look, it's not so clear from Masechet Bikurim or from other places that this total identity between the born Jew, as it were, and the non-born Jew, or the convert, is true. So, for example, apropos of Shavuot, when you bring first fruits to the temple, this is a passage at the beginning. It's at the beginning of Parshat Kitavo. You perform what is called the Vidui Bikurim. You bring your first fruits, and then you put them in a basket, and you give them to the Kohen, and you raise them up in front of God, and you recite Arami Oved Avi, a passage that we know from the Haggadah. It's actually the base text of the entire Haggadah, which is then explained by the Midrash. That's what we do on the Seder night. We take this short passage from Sefer Dvarim and we expound it midrashically. It's not an easy thing to do, so that's the reason why it's a great evening of Talmud Torah, because you're not just telling a story, but you're delving into the meaning of every single word of this very, very compact description of Jewish history from the time of Yaakov Avinu until the time of actually not just Yetziat Mitzrayim, but also to the last pasuk actually talks about coming into the land of Israel. In any event, Shavuos is associated with Bikurim, and the question is, can the ger, can a convert recite Vidui Bikurim? Can he say, "You gave this land to our ancestors"? So the Mishnah Bikurim in the first parak, Mishnah Dalet says, "Elu miviyim velo korim." These are the people who bring the first fruits because it's a mitzvah and they're obligated mitzvahs. Velo korim, but they don't recite Vidui Maaser. Hager mevi veino kore. A convert has to bring the Bikurim because it's a mitzvah, but he can't honestly say that recite the Vidui Bikurim. Why? She'eino yachol lomar asher nishba Hashem lavotenu latet lanu. Because he can't honestly say, in front of God in the Beit HaMikdash yet. Asher nishba Hashem l'avotenu. It wasn't his avotenu. However, im hayta imo Yisrael, but if his mother was Jewish, he can do that. He may be v'koreh because he associates his yichus goes through, in this case, through his mother, and he can also say, my ancestors were also promised the land. Ukeshehu mitpalel, precisely the issue the Rambam talked about. And when he prays, beino levein atzmo, when he prays between, just by himself in Yechidut, Omer Elokei Avot Yisrael. He doesn't say Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu, he says Elokei Avot Yisrael. Ukeshehu beveit HaKnesset. However, if they choose him to be Shliach Tzibur, to daven to the Yamud, he can't say Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu, he says Elokei Avotechem. Your God, your ancestors. He can say Elokeinu, this is our God, but he can't say Elokei Avotechem. V'im hayta imo Yisrael, but if his mother was Jewish, he can say Elokei Avotenu. So if you based on the Mishnah alone, you would actually say the Rambam is wrong, that there is a fundamental difference between those that are born Jewish and those who are not born Jewish. So the last 20 minutes of what I've been talking about actually doesn't go. However, the Yerushalmi differs with the Bavli. Tani b'shem Rabbi Yehuda. We have a bright in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Ger atzmo mevi v'koreh. That the ger himself, I disagree with the Mishnah. He's a Tani, he's allowed. I disagree. A ger can actually bring the first fruits, which we all agree, v'koreh. And he can recite it. Why? Precisely the reason the Rambam gives. Ki av hamon goyim netaticha matam. What's the reason? Ki av hamon goyim netaticha. Abraham is the ancestor of all of many nations. L'she'avar hayita av la'aram v'achshav mikan v'helach ata av l'chol goyim. That you used to be just the father of your immediate family of La'aram, and now you are the father of all these nations that are going to come to worship God, and therefore, just as the Rambam says, you are a spiritual descendant of Avraham Avinu, and therefore everything else devolves from that. And as a result, that's the basis of the Rambam's psak. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Amar halacha Rabbi Yehuda. We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. The Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. We have a general principle. That when Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi paskins halacha kamoto b'chol makom, we paskin like him all across the boards, and so we've saved the day. There's no difference between us and them. Okay, very nice, or maybe not. I brought you the Mishnah of the Rambam. You can take a look there. It's not whatever. Not so simple. Not so simple. First of all, if there is no difference between Jews, born Jews, and converts, why does the Torah go out of its way to prohibit or to admonish us not to hurt the feelings of a ger? The Mishnah talks about in Bava Metzia, and part of your homework is to find it. Talks about something called donat dvarim, hurting people with words. And one of the forms of hurting other people with words is by telling a ger, who are you? You used to worship idols. You used to be used to do this. You used to do that. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to remind where they came from. But if we're all gerim, so what's wrong? I mean, why would you even think that we would do that? It seems a little bit strange. So apparently, even according to the Rambam, the two groups are the same, still, apparently, there's a certain amount of sensitivity that we're called upon, and there's a line of distinction vis-a-vis converts, which seems to indicate that there's an undercurrent that is not so emphatic and not so enthusiastic about converts, and maybe that's the reason why a limit has been set by the Torah in 36 places where we've been commanded not to hurt the feeling of a newcomer, of a convert. What kind of undercurrents? So those undercurrents are usually associated with, and maybe they're principled undercurrents. That's another thing. They're associated with a statement, which is found in a whole bunch of places in Shas. I've only given a few examples. From Yavamas and Kedushin, and there are other places in Gemara and Nida as well. Let's take a look at the Gemara in Yavamas at the top. By the way, please excuse the fact I'm jumping back and forth between Sephardic and Ashkenazis. I generally learn in Ashkenazis and speak in Sephardic, and when I speak English, I end up going back and forth. So I will try to be consistent, but it's not. I can't promise it. Amar Mar. The Gemara in Yavamas discusses the process by which a person converts. Amar Mar. So in a brisa, a little bit before this in the Gemara says, Ger Shabal is Gayer, that if a person, a non-Jew, comes to convert, Omrimlo Mara Isa la Shabbat le Gayer. What do you think? Why would you convert? Why? What's the profit in becoming Jewish? So among the things you do to discourage him, and that's why you discourage him is another whole discussion, and I encourage you to think about that as well. There is something sort of odd in a person converting, in the fact that a person who keeps the 7 mitzvos, the 7 Noachide laws, has a place in the world to come. You're coming, and this is basically what the Gemara says, that you're coming and you're putting your salvation at risk, because if you become Jewish, all kinds of stuff that you were able to do before, you can't do now. So it's sort of like, you go in and you say, hey, I want to buy X, and they tell you it's $25, then they come and you say, I'm not paying less than 100 for the same thing. Why would you do that? So in fact, that's basically what the Gemara says. You ask the Ger, what were you thinking? In any event, of course, we know that being Jewish we believe that being Jewish is better. So we believe it's a higher level. It's a higher level of Kedusha, but that's basically the marketing angle that the Brisa talks about. In any event, Omrimlo Mara Isal Shabbat Gayer. Why have you come to convert? So you give him a little taste of what's involved in being Jewish, some easier mitzvot, some serious mitzvot, and so on. Says the Gemara, why do you have to give him any kind of taste? Excuse me. Why do you have to give him any kind of an indication of what he's getting involved with? It's an interesting question by itself. You can ask yourself why. Obviously, you would think that would be normal. Why you would not sell something without showing what it is. But the Gemara says why, and the Gemara says the reason is to iparish nifrosh, because we want to frustrate him. We want to discourage him. And if he hears what's going to be involved, and he can't have ham, and he can't go skiing on Shabbos, and he can't whatever it is, and he leaves, let him leave. Let him leave. Rashi on this says, let him leave. It's okay. It's fine. No, it's no sweat off. No sweat off our back. The Amar Rabbi Chelbo, and it's a good thing if they don't convert. Why? The Amar Rabbi Chelbo kashim gerim liYisrael kesapachat, because converts are difficult. Converts could create problems, just like a scab. When a convert comes, when a stranger comes, and he attaches himself to the house of Jacob. What do you mean he attaches himself? A scab attaches himself, right? But then it falls off. It's not integrated. It's never quite part of the skin. So gerim never fit. That's a very what should we say? Pessimistic way of looking at things. So why would we say that? Why would we say that? So one of the explanations, the one which is very, very frequently bruited around, starts with Rashi, or Rashi may be quoting his Rebbeim here. In fact, he is quoting his Rebbeim here, the ones that he studied with in Germany. In Rashi Yavamas says, Lashon sapachat, it's a terminology of a scab, she'ochazim ma'aseihem harishonim, that they never really they never really make the break. They never really stop being what they were before. V'lomdim Yisrael mihem, and on the contrary, they can corrupt Jews. Or maybe, the Jews who know less than they may rely on the fact that, and they're unreliable, they may end up becoming a source of misinformation and misbehavior religiously to actual Jews. In Kedushin, when the same Gemara pops up, Rashi says she'enam zehirim b'mitzvot. The converts really they don't take it seriously. They're not careful. V'harigilim etzlam nimshachim etzlam, and again, people that hang around them are influenced by them, and they learn from their deeds. On another occasion, Rashi on another occasion, different Gemara, Rashi raises another issue. And he says, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Mipnei ma zacha Ovadyahu l'neviut. Notice his name is Ovadia. Who is Ovadia? Ovadia was the servant of, Ahab, who was sent by Ahab to go find Elijah during the drought. And he actually was a religious Jew. He had actually saved prophets of God against the wiles and the viciousness of the persecution of Jezebel. And he meets Elijah, and Elijah tells him to go back to Achab. He says, "I'll meet you," and so on and so forth. So Rabbi Yitzchak asked, why was Ovadia? Why was he privileged to become a prophet? Says the Gemara, because he actually took 100 prophets of God and hid them in a cave, and he gave them food and sustained them, and so on and so forth. Rashi says, well, why wouldn't he? What was wrong with Ovadia that he shouldn't become a prophet? I mean, the truth of the matter is that if you have the proper credentials, and if you're the proper religious person, and your soul is pure, and God chooses to make you a prophet, so He'll make you a prophet. What's so surprising? So Rashi says, Sharei Gerhaya. What's surprising is that Ovadyahu. It's interesting. Rashi assumes that the name Ovadyahu also makes him a ger. There are certain names that are always associated with Gerim. One of them is Ruth, one of them is Sarah, one of them is Avram. There are all kinds of sort of like traditional Ger names. Shaya Ger Haya. Ve'en Shechina Shora Ela Ala Meyuchasim B'Yisrael. If you want to be a Navi, you've got to have Yichus. And Gerim don't have Yichus. Gerim don't have Yichus. So here, God made an exception and made Ovadia into a prophet. So what do we have here? So Gerim are problematic because they're not miyuchas. They're not part of our family really, and because they're problematic. They're dicey. Okay, that's one line. So if that's the case, you can understand why the Torah might say don't hurt their feelings, because there's a whole line of interpretation. There's one attitude among Chazal and among Rishonim, and Rashi's not the only one here, who maintained that converts are sort of a kabdeu v'chashdeu. There's sort of a very conflicted attitude towards converts here. On the other hand, that's now it's interesting that the sort of like this interpretation of the words of Rabbi Chelbo is very dominant among Ashkenazi Rishonim up until the middle of the 12th century, up until the time of Rabbeinu Tam, the first Baalei Tosfos. The attitude begins to change. After the 12th century. And the change first finds expression in an interpretation to the words of Rabbi Chelbo that is cited by Tosfos in Kedushin in the name of a ger. Says Tosfos, V'harav Rabbi Avraham ger. There's a convert who converted. And by the way, so what do you mean Rabbi Avraham ger? You're talking about a convert who came from nothing, no knowledge of Torah at all, and ended up in the Beit Midrash of the Baalei Tosfot. So you're talking about a person who's made it, okay? And his words are preserved in Tosfos. Rabbi Avraham ger peresh shahagerin bekiyin b'mitzvot u'medaktekim behem u'baktekihim. That the gerim are better Jews and more precise and more careful in their shmirat mitzvot than the people that are born Jews. And that's why they are kashim lehem liyisrael kesapachad, and that's why born Jews don't like them. Demitoch kain, because of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu maskira avonotehem Yisrael, k'sheinam nosim mitzono. Because God sees how the Gerim carry on, and how careful they are in their Shemir's mitzvahs, and how punctilious they are in halacha, and how devoted they are to the to God and to the Jewish people. And then he looks at the born Jews and he says, "Whoa, you guys don't come up to their, I don't know, ankles." So this is really striking. Why the shift? What happened? Rashi's talking about converts that are slipshod at best, and Avraham Ger and Tosfos is talking about somebody who's better, actually more careful and more punctilious than Jews, people that are born Jewish. And as we'll see, the opinion of Avraham Ger was the one that won out. Now you can argue that today, and that's one of the questions I think we should ask about, is which approach is better. But I think there is something to say here in terms of none of us Gerim. People who are born Jews, or born frum, let's do it this way. People that are born frum actually not infrequently suffer from a not a small degree of self-satisfaction. And anyone who's a Baal Tshuva knows that there is a certain sense of standoffishness that they frequently experience among people who were born religious and went to the right schools and went to the right camps, where they went to Moshava or Morasha or whatever, or Masoro, I don't know what, whichever one. And they don't have the same experiences in NCSY or in the Bnei Akiva or here in Israel in Ezra. And they lack all of that baggage, and they're not all, in Hebrew you'd say megubash, they're not all melded together and everybody knows everybody else. And there's sort of a standoffishness. More than that, I've often heard it said by what are called FFBs, I guess, from birth types, that the intensity of the observance and the intensity of the devotion and the intensity of the tefillah and the intensity of the learning of the Baal Tshuva, Kal V'chomer, the ger, is off-putting. Or as somebody once put it, the problem with Baalei Tshuva and Gerim is that they really believe it. That sounds like something straight. That phenomenon, which if we look at it in the mirror, we will admit exists, comes right out of Rabbi Avraham Ger Tzedek. So it's not so different, it's not so distant from our own social dynamic. But I want to go back to the question of, but what happened? Why was there a shift? Why the position that was enunciated by Rashi, which clearly reflected a reality in which he lived, and why, and all of a sudden this opinion, we'll see in a minute, of Rabbi Avraham Ger Tzedek should change? Well, you know what happened? The Crusades happened. The Crusades happened. In 1096, the Crusades went to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and on the way, they massacred Jews in the major centers of Ashkenazic Jewry, in Mainz, and Worms, and Speyer, and Köln, and Regensburg. Regensburg is another story. And it was, and thousands of Jews were murdered. And what marked those encounters was the fact that Jews died en masse, al Kiddush Hashem. They often killed themselves, which is somewhat problematic halachically, rather than have the goyim even touch them or force them to convert against their will. And among those who died, among those who were martyred in 1096, just at this time of year, actually, some of the worst attacks were on Rosh Chodesh Sivan and during the Shlosh Yemei Agbola and on Shavuos itself. We're Gerim. I give you two stories that comes from one of the Chronicles that describes what happened in 1096. There was one, Vayihisham Ish Tov Ma'od, there was once a very good man there, and his name was Yaakov Rabbi Sulam, and he didn't come from a Miyuchas family. His mother wasn't Jewish. In other words, his mother was a Gioret. Vayikra B'kol Gadol, and he yelled out to all of those who were standing around him, and he said, until this point, you made fun of me. You humiliated me. Now see what I'm going to do. And he took a knife and he put it on put it to his throat, and he sacrificed himself. He slaughtered himself in the name of God rather than become Christian, than be taken by the Christians. Hello? What was he before? What was his mother before? His mother was a Christian. He could have gone back, and he could have said, I'll go back to my mother's family. But no. He chose to martyr himself instead, despite the fact that he'd been treated badly. By who? By the other Jews. Another story. V'gam hayasham eved Hashem. There was a servant of God, V'hu ger tzedek, and he was a proselyte. And he asked Rabbi Moshe Cohen, and he said to him, Sir, if I slaughter myself for the oneness of God, what's going to happen to me in Olam Haba? And what does he tell him? Oh, you'll be with Avraham Avinu and the rest of the Gerei Tzedek, but you won't be with us, because there's separation between the two. Because the Gerim are not as good as us. You're not Miyuchas. Even then, it's a very hard thing to read, because there's a double sacrifice here. The Ger not only left his family, to join the Jewish people. He could have saved his life, but he chose not to because of his devotion to God. If you take a look at the other sources that I have here, you find that these reflect things that were said by those who lived after the crusade, who were well aware of what the Gerim performed under pressure. I'll give you one example. You're welcome to read. You're invited to read to learn the rest of the rest of the sources as well. The Sefer Mitzvot Gadol was written by one of the later Balei Tosfos. His name was Rabbi Moshe Kusi. He lived in the middle 13th century. And on the mitzvah of loving the convert, he says, when it comes to proselytes, there are two positive mitzvahs. First of all, you have to love the proselyte. You have to love the ger because he's your fellow Jew, and also because he's a ger. And why is it? Look at the last line. V'yesh b'midrash tanchuma, because the midrash says that the achievement of the ger is greater in this world, either in this world or in this time, than a Jew when standing before Sinai. Why is that? He refers directly to the Tanchuma, which everybody knows. I brought the first printing of the Tanchuma, and basically said, look what's the big deal of the Jews at Sinai? What's the big deal of the Jews at Sinai that they converted? They saw all the special effects. They saw all of the sounds and the lightning and the thunder and the shofar and everything else. So of course they're impressed. They're going to say, Nasev and Ishma. But the Ger, he wasn't there for that. He followed the inner yearnings of his heart. And that was what brought him close to God. That makes him not only equal to the Jew, it makes him greater than the Jew. It sets a standard for the Jew. He blesses us by providing us with an example of how a Jew is supposed to comport himself. And the truth of the matter is, when you think about it, we don't think about it. We really don't think about it. When you think about it, conversion to this day requires, yes, milah, and requires tefillah, and requires sacrifice. No, it's not a sacrifice in the Beis HaMikdash. If the Beis HaMikdash is built tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, then yes, everybody who's converted actually has to bring a korban. But that's not what we're talking about. Gerim sacrifice more than we are willing to admit, because they have to sacrifice. First of all, they have to sacrifice their families. They have to sacrifice everything they came from. They have to forget everything they came from. Gershon is Gair Kedinov Shanol. We recite that statement as if it was, yeah, for sure, he's not related to anybody. Very nice. It's Allah. It's Allah. It's also a spiritual and emotional reality. You have to sacrifice who you are. You have to deal with your relatives who are mad at you for betraying them. And you do it for principle. We don't have to do that. We were born Jews. They have to sacrifice. If, as Rav Soloveitchik always used to say, being Jewish is a sacrificial existence, then that's precisely what the Ger does. He is the ultimate expression of the sacrificial existence. Um, and he comes. He didn't have to. Nobody forced him. He comes to join the Jewish people. When people come to when non-Jews come to Israel and they want to join and they want to be part of the Jewish people, especially if they have one parent who's Jewish and they want to convert, they're ready to sacrifice more than losing the family that came before. They will sacrifice their lives. They set a standard, according to the Medrash, according to the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, based on the impact of the actions of the converts, who went in the Middle Ages, joined the Jewish people at the threat of their lives. I forgot to mention this. A Christian who converted to Judaism could be burned at the stake for heresy. It's one of the reasons why Christians who become Jewish move to Muslim countries and vice versa, because basically the Christians didn't care for Muslims being Jewish and vice versa. But the convert gives us a lesson in devotion and a lesson in sacrifice, and also in spirituality. The freshness of looking at the Torah, the wonder that some of us don't always have. The Rav always said that when you learn Torah, you're supposed to feel yourself as if you're really standing in Mount Sinai and experiencing Gilui Shechina, you're experiencing revelation. It's something we can learn from Gerim, just like it's something we can learn from Bali Tshuva. Sometimes, and with this I'll close, sometimes actually, the truth of the matter is that we there are certain things that we learn from Gerim that actually are unexpected. So one of the more interesting converts I mentioned before. That there was a Christian who converted. He was a priest from southern Italy who converted to Judaism. He also was a composer, and he learned composition as a priest or as a monk, and he poured his soul into his Judaism, and he took his musical abilities and poured it into music. And so I'd like to close by playing a small piece by Giovanni of Ovadia Ger Tzedek, the Christian, former monk, called Moshe B'Chorev, Moses on Mount Chorev, accepting the Torah. I wish you all Chag Sameach. Learn well. There's more. The sources I've given you should more than keep you busy, and I'm sure there's a lot of other riches that this program is offering you. Chag Sameach.